During the spring of 2019, we were given a gift. A young, talented Ajax squad went on an incredible run through the Champions League, beating defending champions Real Madrid, then dispatching of Juventus, and were seconds away from doing the same to Tottenham for a spot in the final. With Erik ten Hag at the helm, the most recent graduates from the famed Ajax Academy quickly became some of the most sought-after players in the world. Matthijs de Ligt, the baby-faced giant of a 19-year-old marshalling the back line, Frenkie de Jong pulling the strings in the midfield up against the likes of Modric, Kroos, Pjanic, and Matuidi, and not looking out of place. And finally, Donny van de Beek, seemingly popping into random spaces in and around the box and scoring important goals before you could even trace where he came from. De Ligt went to Juve, of course. De Jong went to Barcelona, and while Donny's departure was delayed by a season, he eventually ended up at Manchester United. The boy who had spent his entire life at Ajax wasn't just another player.
He was also very popular and loved by the Ajax fans. I mean, if he was injured, he would stand in the stadium with the Ajax fans and cheer his team on. So he was really a child of the club, and everybody loved him.
With such a bright future, he got started on the right foot at United with a goal in his first match. But 3 starts in his first Premier League season and playing minutes that matched that of Juan Mata, who is nearing retirement, wouldn't have been how we expected his step away from Ajax to go. What's more worrying, his manager is seemingly unable to find a way to utilize him, but at the same time, unwilling to let him go. The signing may not have made sense, but the reluctance to let him leave makes even less sense. Hey, I'm Adrian, welcome to Rabona TV, and for this video I spoke to Papi Mento from We Talk Ajax to get his take on Donny when he was a youngster, his breakout season, and how things have panned out at United. And speaking of which, Lies, content creator on YouTube and for Bleacher Report, gives his analysis on why it hasn't worked out at United, as well as speculation as to why he won't be sold and why he was doomed from the start. We're going to focus on United a lot here. When did you first start to realize that you had such a fantastic talent in Donny van de Beek? Yet another fantastic talent, I should say, from the Ajax Academy. Was there a certain moment that sort of stands out in his early days with the club?
I mean, we heard rumors as an Ajax fan, you always look at the first team, of course, Adrian. So it's always, you hear rumors about the youngsters coming up. It's a great year for the Ajax youth because they're doing great. And I mean, Donny was accompanied by Frenkie and Abdel Nouri. You had Donny van de Beek that was also very good in his position, but he was more of the link-up player, the finisher, coming at the end in the box, having a specific role on the 10 position, and he was very important for us. If you know the Ajax game, the number 10 role is actually a second striker that comes in the box, that's always there. He excels in that. He has both feet he can work with, and he's very calm in front of goal.
He started to really explode when Erik ten Hag came along. Was there a positional changes in any way, or was it just a matter of everyone sort of thriving under the new coach?
If you look at Donny, he was already at the Europa League final against Manchester United on the bench. So he wasn't playing and he had Klaassen in front of him. People compare him to Klaassen. I don't specifically because I think he's a couple of levels higher still. He was on the bench first with Erik ten Hag, and Erik ten Hag wasn't happy with him, but he grew in that role on the 10 position.
So tell me, what was your opinion on Donny, when he was still with Ajax, that great team that we spoke of prior to this that was just storming through the Champions League, made it to the semifinals. So what did you think of him then? And did you think that he was a good fit at United? Was he even a player that you wanted at United at the time?
To be honest, I wouldn't say he was a player I was desperate for. I remember when Man United finished the 1920 season, Donny van de Beek became a player available to Manchester United, I think in part due to the relationship with Edwin van der Sar. If you saw him in the Champions League, there were performances from him that you could see against Spurs, against Real Madrid, this kid has something about him. And the fact that he could be utilized in so many different positions, number 10, where he kind of plays that Thomas Muller, Dele Alli kind of position, infiltrating the space. He can play the 8. He could play the 6 at times. And you kind of saw this profile that Manchester United didn't really need. But hey, if you can get a player like that especially because of the Paul Pogba contract situation and Jesse Lingard kind of being on the way out. We figured, hey, this is another body in midfield that we desperately need. So again, like, I liked him as a player, but I wasn't absolutely desperate for him. But at the same time, you could see that Donny van de Beek brought something to Manchester United, or in theory would bring something that they didn't have. And that was a player who on the ball isn't super ball dominant. He's not someone who needs the ball at all times. He's not someone who puts in 30 crosses, but he's kind of somebody who plays better off the ball. So when we got him, that was kind of my first impression. This is a profile that we're not desperate for, but he does improve us.
Look, I must say this. Going to Manchester United was already, for me, when I saw it, it would be a struggle for Donny, because it's not the style of play Donny is going to excel in. If you look at Ajax, the way we play, possession on the half of the midfield of the opponent's half, then you must say that going to a more direct style of play, which Manchester United does, a more defensive kind of style of play, doesn't also put him in the best position to excel with his capabilities.
So he comes in and he scores on his debut against Crystal Palace, I believe.
Yep.
Then he was just like sent to the bench from then on. He didn't get a start in the league, if my research is correct, until the end of November. So what's up there, man? I mean, you come in when your team is already losing 2-0 against Crystal Palace. You score a goal. You're showing something to the manager. And then you continue to just touch bench and play garbage minutes over and over, like the last 10 minutes. So what happened there, do you think?
Yeah, I think I was actually just going to talk about the Palace game. Like, United's first game, terrible performance. Paul Pogba in particular was absolutely dreadful. And he comes off, again, he hasn't signed his contract yet, so there's a lot of contract rumors going on. Van de Beek comes in for him. One of his first touches of the ball, he scores. And you almost see immediately when Van de Beek gets on the ball, he's looking to make runs in behind, which again, like I said, United doesn't have a lot of players like that. And fans start to build excitement. The next game he's on the bench. Why is that? In fact, the next game, I believe, was against Brighton and Hove Albion. And he was actually very instrumental in that winning goal by Bruno Fernandes from the penalty with his movement off the ball. So you're starting to see him make these cameos. Against Newcastle, he has a huge part to play for, I believe, the second or third goal by Rashford. He's getting himself involved, yet he can never buy a start. And the only games he starts are for Manchester United in the Cup, when Oli basically plays the second string. He plays Matic, he plays Mata. And then even those performances starts, like, he doesn't even get those anymore. It's very difficult to explain why, because although Manchester United fans will say, look, he's had this many opportunities, he's played this many games, when you look at the minutes played, which for me is the most important factor here, it's similar to Juan Mata, who is as close to just being a squad player at Manchester United as you can get. Here's a stat for you. Last season, up until the last two games against Leicester and Wolves, Donny van de Beek had played less minutes than Virgil van Dijk, who was injured in October. That for me just tells you it all. Like, he clearly has not been given an extended run of games in this Manchester United team. And more so than just the minutes, it's the fact, again, he hasn't played back-to-back games. He hasn't been able to build connections with other players.
I mean, you could speak to this better than I could, but maybe across all competitions, maybe he's had 2 starts in a row. I'm not sure. But you know, regardless of that, if we're talking about a maximum of 2 matches started in a row, that's still not enough to build up any sort of momentum or to get comfortable with your teammates. Like, that's very little playing time in a game situation that you actually have in order to adapt to your teammates. So, you know, you touched on it a little bit. He said that he's been told he'll get the minutes. Ollie seems very disinterested in letting him go. So what's up, man? I mean, what's the rationale behind this? Because from my perspective as an outsider, it seems like such a shame that a player of this sort of quality is used as a sort of quote unquote just in case option for the future. So what do you think's going on with him?
You know what? I don't even know if you can consider him that at this point, Adrian, because I look at the 2 positions that he really can play in this United team. It's a number 10 or one of the 2 holding midfielders. And at the 10, he currently has Bruno Fernandes ahead of him. He currently has Paul Pogba ahead of him. He currently has Jesse Lingard ahead of him. All 3 of those players. And Jesse Lingard was a player that Manchester United actively shopped this summer. They did not want to keep Jesse Lingard. And yet here he is coming into games, changing games before Donny van de Beek. And then at the 6, or at the holding midfield position, you have Fred, you have McTominay, you have Paul Pogba, and you even have Nemanja Matic. All 4 of those players are in all these plans ahead of Donny van de Beek. But for me, the biggest question mark is, if all of this is true, if Lingard is favored over Van de Beek, why was Van de Beek not allowed to leave this summer?
Yeah,
clubs were interested in him. Everton was interested in him. This is a guy you paid £40 million for. If you don't have him in your plans, at the very least, you could let him go out on loan to get valuable game time. So for me, the rationale makes no sense. Why keep a player that's clearly not in your plans that still has value? Especially when you see Manchester United's craving for a defensive midfielder. Wouldn't it make more sense to cash in on Van de Beek, who still has some value, and then use that money to basically go buy a player that you need more? For me, it's almost just hoarding at this point. And yeah. I'm not sure what to think, because Van de Beek, again, like at the time of like that transfer window, he was coming out at that podcast saying, yeah, I've been promised game time. I've been told I will get more chances this year. We're now in October. Nothing's improved.
When you heard that he was going to Manchester United, your first thought was, this is not exactly a perfect fit. But did you still have some optimism that he would excel just because he was such a talented player?
Yes. I mean, look, he has a lot of skill, but I just don't think you're going to put Bruno on the bench to play him. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. The way he plays is more of a counter-based oriented number 10 that needs to give the passes or make long runs. It's not really the Donny style. Let me say it like that, you know?
I've been of the opinion since last November that Donny van de Beek will not be a success at Manchester United, even as long as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is in charge. And I say that because, again, I kind of go back to the styles. The way Manchester United plays under Ole and the way Donny van de Beek plays football, if Bruno Fernandes is the prototypical Ole Gunnar Solskjaer player, Donny van de Beek is the antithesis. Like, he is the complete opposite of that style of play. And again, that style of play consisting of guys who want to be on the ball, not much movement off of it, but guys who can get on the ball and make things happen by themselves. Van de Beek is not that kind of player. He probably will never be that kind of player. I read an interesting thread on Twitter the other day. The reason Fred and McTominay are favored by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in midfield is because of how open Manchester United's defense is, and Ole trusts McTominay and Fred to kind of be the more mobile guys to plug the holes in those areas. The question is, are Fred and McTominay some of the biggest factors for why that defense is organized or unorganized? That's another question. But I really believe that's the reason why Van de Beek can't play deep for this Manchester United team, because of how big of a necessity you must have to be mobile. In fact, you've seen Paul Pogba in that position struggle himself. So if Pogba can't get a look in there, I don't think Van de Beek has any hope. So that's kind of why I go back to saying, I always thought back in November, and I got a lot of slate for it, like maybe you're being too reactive, you got to give this guy some time. But I always said Van de Beek would either have to make a dramatic change to his game, or Manchester United would have to completely change the way they play football for this marriage to work. And I don't think it's fair for either of them to completely change for the other. It goes back to what I said. When you think about it, it wasn't a good signing, because as good of a player as he is, the opportunity was there to get him. There were more pressing needs. And this is a player that quite clearly no one can debate now. We have no idea how to use.
You know, he did sort of seem like one of those signings that you just sort of make in order to not allow your rivals to get him or something like that. Or that you just sort of make that signing just because.
I believe we signed him almost like you said, just because he was kind of available. I almost feel like it was like a gift from Edwin van der Sar to Manchester United. Like, hey, we have this really talented young player who is part of this brilliant young Dutch team. And again, although I've just said how brilliant of a player he is, I almost believe that we purchased him without really knowing the kind of player we were getting.
Adrian, just a question. Is there a bigger subject going on at Manchester United? Because I do have the feeling that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't want him, and this transfer was kind of forced upon him because he wanted another player. So I don't know how much that weighs in the choices of getting Donny in.
And I think it's very evident in the way you've seen Ole try and utilize him. He's tried him in almost every single position. He's tried him with different combinations, either with Martial up front with Cavani, next to Pogba, next to Matic in particular. He's really played those two together. And yet I don't think that he's managed to find the best role for Donny van de Beek yet.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer saying that he can play as a 10, he can play as an 8, he can play as a 6, whatever. Am I correct in saying that perhaps he was a bit wrong about, you know, I just feel like utilizing him as a number 6, you're not getting the best out of him. Would you agree with that?
Agree. Yes. Even as a number 8, I'm going to say that's not his best position. Number 10 is the way to go. I think he's great in the link up there. He scores easily. So if you can get him in the box as much as possible, and he being at the end of a pass, not the guy that has to give the pass, you play in his strength much more.
I think that's really important to hear that, because there's a lot of people who think that, you know, he should be competing with someone like Bruno Fernandes for that sort of position where he's the creator. But you're saying that it's not that. He's more the guy making runs off the ball and getting on the end of those balls from Bruno in theory.
Exactly. So, but even Bruno, like I think Bruno plays number 10 role. If you want to play good with Donny, you would have Bruno next to you. Like, for instance, we had Ziyech, you know, he was playing winger as a winger, but he's like also bringing in the crosses and the nice passes for the forwards. And Donny would always be in that position in the box to finish it if the striker didn't.
Yeah, that's, and you look at the highlights. I saw a video recently on Twitter, a compilation of his highlights at Ajax during that 2018-19 run. And almost all of them are him receiving the ball in and around the box. And then you hear people saying how he could be playing as an 8 at United, and it doesn't seem to add up, really. It doesn't seem like the right utilization of him. Let's say you were to slot him in at any sort of position. You were to take someone out and just slot him into this United setup currently. What would that look like? Where would he play?
Again, it takes Manchester United changing for him, because at this point in the season, Van de Beek is not going to just become Bruno Fernandes. It's not going to happen. Aldi has shown that he's very married to this 4-2-3-1. 2 defensive midfielders and 1 number 10 who, let's face it, in Bruno Fernandes is almost playing as another forward. He's that high up for Manchester United. So with that formation in place, I don't see how Van de Beek gets into the team. I think United would have to change the shape and the structure and the formation. And I don't think it's worth, again, like I think Van de Beek's a great player, but I don't think it's worth changing all of that for one guy.
Look, I guess the last question that I have for you here would be that, you know, we're seeing Donny go to Manchester United. He started 3 matches in the Premier League last season. This season, it's looking like more of the same. He was getting as many minutes as like a Juan Mata, a guy who's at the end of his career. And so how does this feel? You know, you're seeing a former Ajax player, a guy who came through the club, who, as you said, would celebrate in the stands when he was injured, etc. How does it feel seeing him not only sit out matches for United, but for the Netherlands as well?
Yeah, it hurts because I know he's a really good footballer, and I rate him very high. We love him as Ajax fans, and we want the best for him. But if you're struggling as a Manchester United and you're trying to give it your all, Donny should be on the 10th position helping you out, because he can create that goal for you, and he would be very important. And I just don't understand that. I've seen Manchester United struggle a lot last season, that he doesn't get the opportunity to come in the last 15 minutes to show his skills on the favorable position. So on the 10th position, what he used to.
No player has a God-given right to playing time. You have to earn it, and when you get your chance, you have to take it. But the fact is, Donny van de Beek has not had his chance, and until he does, I don't think it's fair for any of us to really criticize him. Which a lot of Manchester United fans are doing, I feel, almost to protect the manager, to protect the team. But until this guy is given a fair opportunity, no matter whether you think he was a good signing or a bad one, whether you think he's a good player or a bad one, you have to give the guy some chances.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation, guys. The Donny van de Beek case is a strange one, as I'm sure you guys remember how incredible he was at Ajax. So to see him on the bench all the time, I'm sick of seeing him in a training jacket. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Show some love to our guests by subscribing to them. But aside from that, have a great day. Ciao.